The massive trading station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness of space like a metal city among the stars. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Some looked like glass sculptures that caught starlight. Others resembled living creatures with smooth, flowing lines. All of them were beautiful and advanced in their own way, all except one. The human ship, HSS Silent Thunder, looked like someone had welded scrap metal together and called it a warship. Its hull was gray and dented. Rust stains marked where repairs had been made with whatever materials the crew could find. The weapon mounts stuck out at odd angles, looking more like old construction equipment than military hardware. Captain Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the other vessels through the main screen. His brown eyes showed no emotion. As he studied the alien warships, each one was at least 3 times larger than his frigate. Their hulls gleamed with perfect surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. "Captain," said Ji-woo from her position at the tactical station, "the Vorthak Empire ship is requesting permission to dock next to us." Dae-hyun nodded. "Granted." Ji-woo was young for a tactical officer, barely 25, but she had sharp eyes and quick fingers. She worked the controls and opened a channel. "Vorthak vessel, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. The Vorthak ship moved with impossible grace." It was shaped like a crystal spear, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces. As it settled into the docking bay, Dae-hyun could see alien faces watching his ship through their windows. Even from this distance, he could tell they were not. "Impressed, sir," said Soo-jin from the communications console. Her voice was quiet but clear. "The station commander is calling all ship captains to the main conference room. The Galactic Defense Council is meeting in 1 hour." "Thank you, Soo-jin." Dae-hyun straightened his simple gray uniform. It had no fancy decorations or shining metals, like the alien uniforms he would soon see. "Ji-woo, you have the bridge. I will be back when the meeting ends." The walk through Nexus Prime reminded Dae-hyun why humans often felt out of place in galactic society. The corridors were designed for beings much taller than humans. The lights hurt his eyes with their harsh blue glow. Even the air tasted wrong, filtered through systems made for different lungs. Other ship captains walked past him toward the conference room. They wore uniforms that seemed to glow with their own light. Their weapons looked like works of art. Some had extra arms or tentacles, others had scales or fur that changed color as they moved. All of them stared at Dae-hyun's simple appearance and looked away quickly. The conference room was huge, with a ceiling that stretched up into shadows. A round table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs of different sizes and shapes. Dae-hyun found the human section and sat down. His chair was the smallest one there. Admiral Kethavara of the Vorthak Empire entered the room like a force of nature. She was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished metal. Her uniform was covered in glowing symbols that showed her rank and achievements. Behind her walked a group of officers who looked just as impressive. She saw Dae-hyun and stopped. Her large eyes, which had no pupils that humans could see, focused on him. "So this is the famous human captain we have heard about." Other alien officers began to gather around. Commander Zilthara of the Zalani Confederation approached from the other side of the room. Her people looked like tall humans, but with skin that shifted through different shades of blue. She wore a uniform that seemed to be made of liquid silver. "I was expecting someone more impressive," Zilthara said. Her voice sounded like music, but there was no kindness in it. "Your ship looks like it barely survived the journey here." Admiral Kethavara made a sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps humans define warship differently than the rest of us. That vessel in Docking Bay 7 looks more suitable for carrying cargo than fighting battles. More alien officers joined the group. Captain Mordun of the Hegemony pointed at Dae-hyun with one of his 4 arms. I have studied human military technology. They still use projectile weapons. Actual chunks of metal fired from tubes. How primitive. Primitive indeed, agreed Admiral Kethvara. While we have perfected energy weapons that can slice through any armor, humans still think throwing rocks will win wars. Commander Zilthara tilted her head, studying Dae-hyun like he was an interesting bug. Tell me, Captain, do you really believe your ship could stand against modern warships? Your weapons are hundreds of years behind our technology. Dae-hyun remained silent. His orders were clear. Maintain diplomatic relations. Do not start conflicts. Let the aliens think what they wanted to think. Look at his uniform, said Captain Mordun. No energy shields, no bio-enhancement ports, no neural interface connections. How does he even communicate with his ship's computer? With his voice, probably, Admiral Kethvara said. Like an ancient ancestor talking to cave paintings. The other aliens found this very funny. Their laughter filled the conference room. Each species making different sounds but all expressing the same emotion. They thought humans were a joke. I heard, said Commander Zilthara, that human ships do not even have proper artificial intelligence. They use actual human crews to operate every system. Can you imagine? Living beings pushing buttons and pulling levers like mechanics. How inefficient, agreed Admiral Kethvara. My ship has 3,000 crew members, but they only supervise. The ship fights itself, thinks for itself, repairs itself. Human ships probably need their crews to aim their weapons manually. Captain Mordun's 4 eyes gleamed with amusement. Next, you will tell me they use paper maps to navigate space. More laughter echoed through the room. Other alien captains who had been sitting at their own sections of the table began to listen. Soon, dozens of beings from across the galaxy were enjoying the entertainment of mocking human technology. Captain Dae-hyun, Admiral Kethvara said, using his name like it tasted bad. Perhaps you should explain to us how your warship could possibly contribute to galactic defense. What weapons do you carry? Rocks? Sharp sticks? Chemical explosives, maybe, suggested Commander Zilthara. I believe humans still use controlled chemical reactions for propulsion. How charming. Do not forget the metal projectiles, added Captain Mordun. Fired from tubes using more chemical explosions. Such elegant technology. Dae-hyun sat quietly through it all. His face showed no anger, no embarrassment, no emotion at all. This seemed to disappoint the aliens who had been hoping for a reaction. He does not even defend his primitive technology, observed Admiral Kethvara. Perhaps humans know how far behind they truly are. The station commander, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, finally called the meeting to order. The aliens returned to their seats, still chuckling among themselves. But throughout the entire meeting about galactic defense strategies, they continued to make quiet comments about human technology. None of them noticed that Captain Dae-hyun never once tried to correct their assumptions. He simply listened, learned, and waited. Back on his ship, the crew was also waiting. The emergency alarm echoed through the conference room 3 hours later. The floating jellyfish commander pulsed with urgent red light as information flowed across the room's main display screen. Numbers and symbols that Dae-hyun could not read scrolled past. But he understood the pictures well enough. A planet was dying. Kepler 442b mining colony. The commander announced in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Population, 2 million beings from 17 different species. Status: under attack. The display showed long-range sensor readings from the colony. Ships surrounded the planet like hungry insects around fruit. But these were not ordinary ships. They were dark, angular things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Even through the grainy sensor images, they looked wrong somehow. Admiral Kathvara stood up from her chair, her metal-like skin reflecting the red emergency lights. Who dares attack a neutral colony under Galactic Defense Council protection? Unknown. Attackers, the commander replied. The colony's final transmission identified them only as devourers. All communication was lost 47 minutes ago. Commander Zilthara's blue skin had turned almost purple with concern. Devourers? I have never heard of this species. Neither have we, said Captain Mordun, his forearms working frantically at his personal data pad. No records exist in any galactic database. The display changed to show new images. These came from automated defense satellites around the colony. Dae-hyun watched as the dark ships moved through space with purpose and coordination. They did not fly in the chaotic patterns of pirates or raiders. This was a military operation. The attackers are consuming the planet's surface, the commander said. The images showed beams of energy reaching down from the ships to the ground, below. Where the beams touched, everything simply disappeared. Not destroyed or burned, but gone as if it had never existed. Impossible, breathed Admiral Kathvara. No known technology can disintegrate matter at that scale. These devourers can, the commander said simply. At current consumption rate, the planet will be completely gone in 18 hours. The conference room fell silent except for the humming of the station's life support systems. 2 million people were about to die, and no one seemed to know how to stop it. Captain Morden was the first to speak. How many ships do they have? Sensors detected over 300 vessels before the satellites went dark, the commander answered. Size estimates range from frigate class to something larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. Commander Zilthara stood up, her liquid silver uniform rippling with energy. The Zilani Confederation will respond immediately. Our fleet can be at Kepler 442b in 6 hours. The Vorthak Empire stands ready as well, declared Admiral Kathvara. Our newest battle cruisers have never been defeated in combat. Other alien captains around the room began volunteering their ships and crews. The Hegemony offered their heavy destroyers. The Spiral Collective promised their carrier groups. Even the mysterious Void Walkers said they would send warships. The commander's form brightened as it processed all the offers. Combined fleet strength will be significant. 47 capital ships, 132 escort vessels, plus support craft. This should be more than sufficient to handle 300 enemy ships. Dae-hyun raised his hand. The gesture was so simple and human that several aliens turned to stare at him as if they had forgotten he was there. The human fleet will also respond, he said quietly. Admiral Kathvara's expression was hard to read, but her tone made her feelings clear. Captain, with respect, this is a serious military operation. We cannot afford to babysit obsolete technology during combat. Our ships might get in the way, agreed Commander Zilthara. Modern warfare requires coordination between advanced computer systems. Your manual control methods could disrupt our battle networks. Captain Mordun nodded with all 4 of his heads. Perhaps it would be better if human ships remained here. Someone should guard the station while the real warships handle the threat. The commander pulsed with consideration. Captain Dae-hyun, what is the current strength of the human response fleet? "One ship," Daehyun answered. "The HSS Silent Thunder." The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Kethvara's metallic laughter. "One ship? Against 300 Devourer vessels?" "Captain, that would be suicide," said Commander Zilthara, though her voice now carried something that might have been concern. "Your crew would be throwing their lives away for nothing." "We appreciate the offer," Captain Morden said in a tone that suggested the opposite. "But this situation requires weapons and technology that can actually damage the enemy." Daehyun nodded as if he understood their point. "What role would you assign to the Silent Thunder?" The aliens exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Kethvara spoke. "Rear guard support. Stay behind the main battle line and provide assistance to damaged ships. Your medical facilities might be useful for treating wounded. Rescue operations," added Commander Zilthara. "If any of our people get stranded, your ship could pick them up." "Communications relay," suggested Captain Mordun. "Your primitive radio systems might work if our quantum networks get jammed." The commander made a decision. "These assignments are acceptable. Captain Daehyun, your ship will join the fleet but remain in a support role. Do not engage enemy vessels directly." "Understood," Daehyun said. As the meeting broke up and the various alien captains hurried back to their ships, Admiral Kethvara approached Daehyun one more time. "Captain, I want to be clear about something," she said. "This battle will be unlike anything humans have ever seen. The energy weapons we will be using can destroy entire city blocks in seconds. Our shields can deflect attacks that would vaporize your ship completely. Please stay out of our way." "We will follow our assigned role," Daehyun replied. "Commander." Zilthara joined them. "Your crew is very brave to volunteer for this mission, even in a support role. Make sure they understand the danger they will be facing." "They understand," Daehyun said. The two alien officers left him standing alone in the conference room. Through the viewports, Daehyun could see their ships powering up for departure. Energy fields crackled around their hulls. Weapon systems extended and retracted as automated tests ran their checks. Everything about the alien warships spoke of advanced technology and devastating power. When Daehyun returned to the Silent Thunder, he found his crew already preparing for departure. Bon-Su, the chief engineer, looked up from his console with oil-stained hands and a worried expression. "Captain, I heard about the mission. Are we really taking on 300 enemy ships?" "We are following orders," Daehyun said simply. Sujin turned from her communications station. "Sir, the alien fleets are already leaving dock. They are not waiting for us to join their formation." "They assume we will catch up," Daehyun said. "Nara, prepare for departure. Set course for Kepler 442b. The pilot's hands moved over her controls with practiced ease. "Engines online, Captain. We can depart when ready." Taman, the weapons specialist, spoke without looking up from his station. "Captain, should I begin weapon system checks?" "Yes," Daehyun said. "Check everything twice." As the Silent Thunder undocked from Nexus Prime and followed the alien fleet into dark space, none of the aliens bothered to monitor the human ship's energy readings. If they had, they might have noticed something strange about the vessel they considered so primitive. The power signatures coming from deep within the Silent Thunder were unlike anything in their databases. The combined fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found made even the most experienced alien commanders pause in shock. The planet was half gone. Where Kepler 442b should have been a blue-green, World covered in mining facilities and cities, now only a ragged sphere remained. The missing half looked like someone had taken a massive bite out of an apple. The edges where matter had been consumed glowed with an eerie red light. Impossible, breathed Admiral Kethavara over the fleet communication channel. Her voice carried through every ship in the Alliance. Nothing could eat a planet that quickly. Commander Zilthara's ship was already running deep scans. I am detecting no life signs on the remaining surface. The entire population is gone. Around the dying planet, the Devourer fleet waited. Up close, their ships looked even more wrong than they had on the long-range sensors. They were not built so much as grown, with surfaces that seemed to shift and change even as the Alliance fleet watched. Some were small and fast, darting between larger vessels like hungry fish. Others were massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, their bulk blotting out entire sections of stars. Captain Mordun's tactical officer was counting targets. 347 enemy vessels confirmed. Sizes range from escort class to... He paused. Admiral, the largest Devourer ship is reading as 8 kilometers long. 8 kilometers? Admiral Kethavara's shock was clear in her voice. That is larger than our biggest space stations. The Devourer ships began to move as soon as they detected the Alliance fleet. They did not break formation or show any signs of panic. Instead, they turned toward the approaching warships with the patient certainty of predators who had never known defeat. All ships, this is Admiral Kethavara. Form battle line Alpha. Energy weapons to full charge. Show these monsters what happens when they threaten innocent people. The alien fleet spread out into their attack formation. It was beautiful to watch. Ships that looked like crystal spears took positions alongside vessels that resembled flowing metal sculptures. Energy fields connected the ships in a web of shared power and information. Weapon systems emerged from hulls like flowers blooming, each one designed to slice through enemy armor with beams of pure energy. The silent thunder hung back behind the main battle line, just as ordered. From his bridge, Captain Dae-hyun watched the alien preparations with quiet interest. His crew worked at their stations without the urgent energy shown by their allies. "Captain," said Ji-woo from her tactical station, "the alien fleet is requesting our weapon specifications for their targeting computers. Tell them we will coordinate independently," Dae-hyun replied. Soo-jin opened a channel to the fleet command. After a brief conversation, she turned back to Dae-hyun. "Admiral Kethavara says that is acceptable. She reminds us to stay clear of their firing lines." The battle began when the Devourers fired first. Beams of dark energy lanced out from there, ships toward the Alliance fleet. But these were not the bright, clean energy weapons that civilized species used. The Devourer beams seemed to eat light itself, creating tunnels of absolute darkness through space. "Evasive action," Admiral Kethavara commanded. The alien ships moved with incredible grace, their advanced computer systems calculating millions of possible trajectories in seconds. Most of the dark beams missed their targets completely. A few struck shields and were absorbed by energy fields that sparkled like rainbows. "No damage to any Allied vessel," reported Commander Zilthara. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our defensive systems." "Return fire," Admiral Kethavara ordered. The Alliance fleet responded, with a display of firepower that lit up the system like a small star. Beams of pure energy reached out across space toward the Devourer ships. Some beams were blue-white and clean, others were red and pulsing with power. A few flickered through colors that human eyes could not properly see. The energy weapons struck the Devourer ships and did almost nothing. Impossible. said Captain Mordun. Direct hits on multiple targets. No damage readings. Commander Zilthara's sensors were running full scans on the enemy fleet. Their hulls are absorbing our energy weapons. The beams are not penetrating or deflecting. They are being consumed somehow. Admiral Kethvara's voice carried a note of concern for the first time. All ships, increase power to weapons, maximum energy output. The second wave of Alliance attacks was twice as powerful as the first. The energy beams were so bright they would have blinded anyone looking directly at them. They struck the Devourer, ships with enough force to crack moons. And again, they did nothing. Admiral, reported Commander Zilthara, the enemy ships are not just absorbing our weapons. They are getting stronger. Energy readings from their hulls are increasing with each hit. The Devourers fired again. This time their dark beams were more focused, more powerful. They punched through Alliance shields like they were made of paper. 3 alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, shields failing on multiple vessels. Captain Mordun's voice was tight with panic. These creatures are adapting to our weapons. Admiral Kethvara tried to maintain control. All ships fall back to defensive position beta. Concentrate fire on the smallest targets. But the retreat was too late. The Devourer fleet was moving forward with increasing speed. Their ships seemed to flow through space like liquid shadow, getting closer to the Alliance vessels with each passing moment. More alien ships exploded as the dark beams found their targets. The beautiful formations that had looked so impressive were falling apart under the relentless assault. Ships that had never known defeat were being destroyed by enemies they could not even hurt. Admiral, we have lost 9 ships, reported Commander Zilthara. Her voice was steady, but Dae-hyun could hear the fear underneath. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Negative, Admiral Kethvara replied, though her own ship was now taking damage. We cannot abandon the system to these monsters, Captain. Mordun's ship was limping away from the battle with half its hull melted by dark energy. Admiral, our weapons are useless. We need to retreat and develop new tactics. The Alliance fleet was in full retreat now, their perfect formations broken and scattered. Ships that had seemed invincible were running for their lives from an enemy. They could not understand or fight. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Kethvara opened a channel to the Silent Thunder. Her voice was desperate, though she tried to hide it. Captain Dae-hyun, do you have any suggestions? Your primitive weapons might work differently than ours. There was a long pause before Dae-hyun replied. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, completely unaffected by the panic around him. Admiral, I request permission to engage the enemy. The silence that followed was broken only by the sounds of more Alliance ships being destroyed. Captain, Admiral Kethvara said finally, this is not the time for heroic gestures. Your ship cannot survive what destroyed our battle cruisers. Permission to engage, Dae-hyun repeated. Commander Zilthara cut into the channel. Captain, your crew has families to return to. Do not throw your lives away for nothing. From his position behind the alien fleet, Dae-hyun watched the Devourers continue their advance. Soon they would catch the retreating Alliance ships. Soon this battle would become a massacre. Permission to engage? He said for the 3rd time. Admiral, Kethvara's ship shuddered under another hit from dark energy. Captain Dae-hyun, you have permission to engage. Good luck. The Silent Thunder began to move forward, passing the retreating alien vessels and heading directly toward the Devourer fleet. As the Silent Thunder moved past the retreating Alliance fleet, the alien crews watched in stunned silence. The small human ship looked even more pathetic, next to the massive devourer vessels that filled the space ahead. It was like watching a child with a stick charge toward a pack of wolves. "Captain Dae-hyun?" Admiral Kethvara's voice crackled over the communication channel. "What is your battle plan?" "We will engage the enemy fleet," Dae-hyun replied simply. "With what weapons?" Commander Zilthara demanded. "Your metal projectiles will be even less effective than our energy beams." Inside the Silent Thunder, the human crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no shouting, no dramatic speeches about heroic sacrifice. They simply did their jobs with the practiced ease of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Bonsu, the chief engineer, spoke softly into his headset while his fingers danced across control panels that looked ancient compared to alien technology. "Reactor core at optimal temperature, magnetic containment field stable, antimatter injection system ready." At the weapons station, Taemin was running through a checklist that would have seemed primitive to any alien observer. His screens showed simple numbers and basic graphics instead of the holographic displays used by advanced civilizations. Primary: weapon charge to 15%, targeting computer online, firing solution calculating. Nara, the pilot, adjusted their course with manual controls instead of thought interface systems. "Approach vector confirmed. Distance to target, 40,000 kilometers and closing." Jiwoo monitored the tactical situation with instruments that measured things the aliens had forgotten were important. Enemy formation maintaining position. No change in their shield configurations. Sujin kept the communication channels open, listening to the confused chatter from the alien fleet. "Admiral Kethvara is requesting our weapon specifications again. Commander Zilthara wants to know why we are not firing yet." Hae-jin, the navigator, worked with star charts printed on actual paper while her computer calculated trajectories, using mathematics that had not changed in thousands of years. "Optimal firing position in 90 seconds, Captain. Wind drift from solar radiation negligible. Gravitational effects from the planet calculated and compensated." To the watching aliens, it looked like the humans were doing nothing at all. The Silent Thunder simply flew toward the enemy fleet without firing, without taking evasive action, without any of the dramatic maneuvers that modern warfare required. "Are they having technical problems?" Captain Mordoon asked over the fleet channel. "Perhaps their primitive systems have failed," suggested Admiral Kethvara. "Captain Dae-hyun, do you require assistance?" "Negative," Dae-hyun replied. "We are proceeding as planned." The Devourer ships had noticed the approaching human vessel. Several of the smaller ones turned their dark weapons toward the Silent Thunder. Beams of light-eating energy reached out across space, but they passed harmlessly around the human ship. The Devourers seemed confused by the lack of energy signatures to target. Inside the Silent Thunder, Bonsu smiled grimly at his instruments. "Stealth systems working perfectly, Captain. To their sensors, we look like a piece of space debris." This was the first hint that human technology might not be as primitive as it appeared. The aliens had been so focused on the ship's crude exterior that they had never wondered why a military vessel would look like scrap metal. Now, as Devourer targeting systems failed to lock onto the Silent Thunder, they began to realize that appearances could be deceiving. "How are they avoiding enemy fire?" Commander Zilthara asked. "Unknown," Admiral Kethvara replied. "Their ship is not showing any energy signatures that would indicate active stealth systems." What the aliens did not understand was that human stealth technology worked on completely different principles than their own. Instead of using energy fields to bend light and sensor beams, human engineers had designed their ships to simply absorb everything. The Silent Thunder's hull was covered in materials that drank energy like a sponge, making it nearly invisible to sensors that expected targets to reflect or emit something back. Taemin looked up from his weapons console. "Captain, target acquired. Firing solution locked." "What are they targeting?" Captain Mordun asked over the fleet channel. "The Devourer formation is too spread out for effective bombardment." The aliens watched their instruments with growing confusion. The Silent Thunder was not aiming at the closest enemy ship, or the largest one, or even the most dangerous one. Instead, the human vessel was pointing toward a spot in space that seemed to contain nothing important at all. Perhaps their navigation. "Systems are malfunctioning," suggested Commander Zilthara. "They appear to be targeting empty space." But Hyejin's calculations were perfect. She had not just plotted the current positions of enemy ships, she had predicted where they would be when the human weapon reached them. More importantly, she had found the one point in space where the maximum number of Devourer vessels would be aligned. "Primary weapon charged to full power," Taemin announced. For the first time since the battle began, the aliens detected unusual energy readings from the Silent Thunder. But the readings made no sense. The power signature was enormous, larger than anything their databases contained, but it was not coming from any weapon system they recognized. "Captain Dae-hyun," Admiral Kethvara called urgently. "We are reading. Massive energy buildup in your ship. Are you experiencing a reactor failure?" "Negative," Dae-hyun replied calmly. "All systems operating normally." Deep inside the Silent Thunder, in chambers that the aliens had assumed contained primitive machinery, something incredible was happening. Bonsu watched as magnetic fields, stronger than those found in neutron stars, contained a reaction that would have impressed the scientists who built the first atomic bombs. But this was not nuclear fusion or fission. This was matter and antimatter meeting in carefully controlled amounts, releasing energy according to Einstein's most famous equation. The power being generated was enough to supply a small planet, and all of it was being channeled into a single system. "Magnetic acceleration chamber at optimal field strength," Bonsu reported. "Projectile loaded and secured." The projectile was not impressive to look at. It was a simple tungsten carbide rod, 1 meter long and 10 centimeters wide. It contained no explosives, no energy weapons, no advanced technology at all. It was just a very dense piece of metal, but it was about to become the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. "Target alignment confirmed," Hyejin said. "Gravitational effects calculated. Solar wind compensation locked in." "Weapon ready," Taemin announced. Dae-hyun looked at the tactical display one more time. The Devourer fleet was exactly where Hyejin had predicted it would be. Their ships were aligned in a formation that would allow a single projectile to pass through multiple targets. "Fire," he said quietly. The aliens expected to see energy beams, missile launches, or some other visible sign of weapon discharge. Instead, they detected only a brief magnetic pulse from the Silent Thunder, so small they almost missed it entirely. "Did they fire?" Captain Mordun asked. "Unknown," replied Admiral Kethvara. "No projectiles detected on sensors." They were wrong. A projectile had been fired. It was simply moving too fast for their sensors to track. The tungsten carbide rod was now traveling at 15% of the speed of light, accelerated by magnetic fields that had compressed the energy of matter and antimatter into pure kinetic force. It was invisible, undetectable, and absolutely unstoppable. and it was heading directly toward the heart of the Devourer fleet. The tungsten carbide projectile moved through space faster than thought, faster than light itself could travel very far in the same time. At 15% of light speed, it covered the distance between the Silent Thunder and the Devourer fleet in just over 2 seconds. 2 seconds was not enough time for the alien sensors to detect it. 2 seconds was not enough time for the Devourer ships to react. 2 seconds was barely enough time for the laws of physics to prepare for what was about to happen. Admiral Kethvara watched her tactical display with growing confusion. The Silent Thunder had fired something, but her advanced sensors showed nothing approaching the enemy fleet. Captain Dae-hyun, we show no incoming projectiles. Are you certain your weapon discharged properly? Confirmed, Dae-hyun replied in his usual calm voice. Commander Zilthara's science officer was running deep scans on the space between the human ship and the Devourers. I am detecting trace particles of ionized gas, but no solid objects. Perhaps their weapon misfired. Captain Morden was more direct in his assessment. Captain, your primitive technology has failed at the worst possible moment. The Devourers are beginning another attack run. It was true. The dark ships were moving forward again, their light-eating weapons charging for another devastating assault on the retreating Alliance fleet. They showed no signs of concern about the human vessel that had supposedly fired at them. Inside the Silent Thunder, the crew waited with professional patience. Tae-min watched his countdown timer with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the battle. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The first sign that something extraordinary had happened was a flash of light brighter than the system's star. It appeared at the exact center of the Devourer formation, where their largest ships had gathered for mutual protection. For just a moment, a new sun blazed in the darkness of space. What was that? Admiral Kethvara demanded. Her question was answered a fraction of a second later when the shock wave hit. The tungsten carbide projectile had struck the lead Devourer mothership at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy released was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed in a single weapon discharge. When a 1-meter rod traveling at 45,000 kilometers per second hit 8 kilometers of alien ship, the laws of physics took over with devastating efficiency. The mothership did not explode. Explosions were too slow, too gentle for what happened. Instead, the massive vessel simply ceased to exist. Every atom in the projectile's path was torn apart at the molecular level. The energy release turned matter into plasma, plasma into energy, and energy into an expanding sphere of destruction that reached out like the fist of an angry god. The aliens watched in stunned silence as their sensors tried to process what they were seeing. Where the largest Devourer ship had been, there was now only an expanding bubble of superheated gas and radiation. Impossible, whispered Commander Zilthara. Nothing could destroy a ship that large so completely, but the destruction was just beginning. The projectile had been aimed not just at the mothership, but at the perfect point where multiple enemy vessels would be aligned. As the tungsten carbide rod punched through the first target, it barely slowed down. The energy release had vaporized most of its mass, but the remaining core was still traveling at a significant percentage of light speed. It struck the second Devourer ship a millisecond later. This vessel was smaller than the mothership, only 3 kilometers long, but it was packed with the same strange technology that had absorbed the Alliance energy weapons. None of that mattered now. The projectile core hit the ship's central section and passed completely through it, leaving a tunnel of destruction 10 meters wide. The ship broke apart like a toy struck by a hammer. The third impact occurred before the aliens had even registered the second one. The projectile, now reduced to a fragment of super-dense metal no larger than a marble, struck a Devourer cruiser near the engine section. The kinetic energy was still enormous, still more than enough to shatter any known material. The cruiser's hull, which had laughed off the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy, offered no resistance at all. The projectile fragment punched through like the ship was made of paper. "By the ancestors," breathed Captain Morden. "One shot just destroyed 3 enemy vessels." But even this was not the end. The energy release from the first impact was expanding outward at nearly the speed of light. It hit the ships closest to the mothership like a wave of pure destruction. Hulls that had absorbed energy weapons began to buckle and melt under the intense radiation. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were now tumbling through space, their dark hulls glowing red with heat. The shock wave continued to spread, carrying debris from the destroyed ships at velocities that turned metal fragments into deadly projectiles. Pieces of the mothership, accelerated to thousands of kilometers per second, slammed into other Devourer vessels with the force of nuclear weapons. Chain reactions began to cascade through the enemy fleet. Ships struck by high velocity. Debris exploded in brilliant flashes. The explosions created more debris, which hit more ships, which exploded in turn. What had started as a single perfectly aimed shot was becoming a wave of destruction that consumed everything in its path. Admiral Kethvara's instruments were overloading as they tried to track the expanding disaster. "How many enemy ships have been destroyed?" Her tactical officer's voice was hoarse with disbelief. 57 confirmed destroyed, another 112 showing severe damage. The entire center of their formation has been eliminated. Commander Zilthara was running her own scans, hoping to find some explanation for what they had witnessed. "The energy readings are off all our scales. That single projectile released more kinetic energy than our entire fleet could generate. In a month, the surviving Devourer ships were in chaos. Their perfect formation had been shattered by a weapon they could not understand or defend against. Ships that had never known fear were now fleeing in all directions, their crews apparently realizing that they faced something beyond their comprehension. Captain Morden's science officer was frantically analyzing the weapon discharge. The projectile achieved relativistic velocity through magnetic acceleration, but the power requirements? It should be impossible to generate that much energy in a ship that small. "Unless," said Commander Zilthara slowly, "their power source is not what we assumed it to be." The aliens were beginning to understand that they had been very wrong about human technology. The crude exterior and primitive appearance had hidden something far more advanced than anything in their databases. Admiral Kethvara opened a channel to the silent thunder. When she spoke, her voice carried a respect that had been completely absent before. "Captain De-Hyun, what did you just do?" The answer came back in the same calm, emotionless tone that De-Hyun had used throughout the entire battle. "We fired once. In the distance, the Devourer fleet was in full retreat. Ships that had been consuming a planet were now running for their lives from a single human vessel that looked like it had been built from scrap metal. The battle was over. The war had ended with one shot. Complete silence filled the communication channels of the Alliance fleet. For nearly 5 minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds were the quiet humming of life support systems and the occasional beep of instruments as they tried to make sense of the impossible readings on their screens. Admiral Kethvara was the first to break the silence. Her voice, which had been so confident and mocking just hours earlier, now carried a tremor that she could not quite hide. "Captain De-Hyun, what exactly did you just do?" The answer came back in the same steady tone that the human captain had used throughout the entire battle. We engaged the enemy fleet with our primary weapon system. Primary weapon system? Commander Zilthara's voice cracked slightly as she spoke. You just eliminated over 200 warships with a single shot. What kind of weapon can do that? A kinetic penetrator, Dae-hyun replied simply. Captain Mordun's 4 arms were working frantically at his control panels, trying to analyze the sensor data his ship had collected during the engagement. Kinetic penetrator? You mean you really did just throw a piece of metal at them? Correct. The aliens exchanged glances across their fleet communications, their expressions ranging from disbelief to dawning horror. They had spent the entire day mocking human technology for being primitive and outdated. Now they were beginning to understand that they had completely misunderstood what they were looking at. Admiral Kethvara's science officer was running calculations on his computer, trying to determine how much energy had been released by the human weapon. The numbers that came back made him check his work 3 times before he trusted them. Admiral, he said quietly, the kinetic energy released by that projectile was equivalent to approximately 50 antimatter warheads. To accelerate a solid object to those velocities would require power generation capabilities that should not be possible in a ship that size. Unless, Commander Zilthara said slowly, their power source is not fusion or quantum generators. Her own science officer had been running similar calculations. Commander, if my readings are correct, the energy signature from the human ship suggests they are using controlled matter-antimatter annihilation reactions. But that would require containment technology far beyond anything in our databases. The implications of this revelation began to sink in. Antimatter was not unknown to galactic civilization, but containing it safely required massive facilities and exotic matter fields. The idea that humans could fit such technology into a small frigate was beyond anything the aliens had imagined possible. Captain Dae-hyun, Admiral Kethvara said carefully, are you telling us that your ship is powered by antimatter? Our power systems utilize matter-antimatter reactions. Yes. Captain Mordun's tactical display was still showing the expanding debris field where the Devourer fleet had been. But how did you target so many ships with a single projectile? Our computers could not have calculated a firing solution for that kind of cascade effect. Our navigator plotted the trajectory using gravitational mechanics and orbital prediction algorithms, Dae-hyun explained. Algorithms? Commander Zilthara asked. Not quantum probability matrices or temporal calculation systems? Basic mathematics, Dae-hyun confirmed. This answer was somehow more disturbing than the antimatter revelation. The aliens had developed incredibly sophisticated computer systems that could calculate millions of variables simultaneously. The idea that humans had achieved better results using simple math was deeply unsettling. Admiral Kethvara's ship moved closer to the silent thunder, her sensors scanning the human vessel with new respect. Captain, I must ask, how many ships like yours does humanity possess? There was a long pause before Dae-hyun answered. That information is classified. The silence that followed this statement was heavy with implications. Every alien commander was thinking the same thing. If humans had built one ship capable of destroying an entire fleet, how many more might they have? Commander Zilthara tried a different approach. Captain, your weapon, the kinetic penetrator, is this standard? Equipment for human warships? Our ships are equipped with appropriate defensive systems, Dae-hyun replied diplomatically. Captain Mordun was studying the tactical recordings of the battle, trying to understand how the humans had achieved such devastating results. Captain, Your ship showed no energy signatures before firing. How did you approach the enemy fleet without being detected? Standard stealth protocols, Dae-hyun said. But we saw no energy fields, no subspace distortions, no quantum masking, Admiral Kethvara protested. How is your stealth technology functioning? Our hull absorbs electromagnetic radiation across all detectable spectrums. Bon-Su's voice came over the channel as Dae-hyun allowed his engineer to answer. We do not deflect or mask energy signatures. We simply absorb them. The aliens were beginning to understand that human technology worked on completely different principles than their own. While galactic civilization had focused on exotic energy, fields, and quantum manipulation, humans had perfected the fundamental forces of physics. Absorption stealth, Commander Zilthara mused. Brilliant in its simplicity. No energy fields to detect because there are no energy fields being used. Admiral Kethvara was reviewing everything that had happened since the humans arrived at Nexus Prime. Captain Dae-hyun, when we commented on your ship's appearance and technology, you never corrected our assumptions. You never asked the right questions, Dae-hyun replied. This simple statement made several alien commanders wince. They had been so confident in their technological superiority that they had never bothered to actually investigate human capabilities. They had looked at the crude exterior of the Silent Thunder and assumed they knew everything about it. The rust stains, Captain Mordun said suddenly. They are not signs of poor maintenance. They are part of the absorption stealth system. Correct, Bon-Su confirmed. Irregular surface textures help disperse sensor beams. Commander Zilthara was putting together more pieces of the puzzle. The awkward weapon mounts, the mismatched hull plating. It is all designed to make your ship look primitive and harmless. Camouflage is an effective defensive strategy, Dae-hyun agreed. Admiral Kethvara felt a chill run through her metallic skin as she realized how completely they had been fooled. Captain, how long has humanity possessed this level of technology? Our current weapon systems have been in development for approximately 50 years. 50 years. While the aliens had been dismissing humanity as a primitive species, humans had been quietly developing weapons that could eliminate entire fleets with single shots. The implications were staggering. Captain Dae-hyun, Admiral Kethvara said, formally, on behalf of the Vorthek Empire, I wish to apologize for our misconceptions about human capabilities. Apology accepted, Dae-hyun replied. Commander Zilthara cleared her throat nervously. Captain, the Zalani Confederation would be interested in discussing possible technological exchanges. Your kinetic weapon technology is impressive. I will pass your request to the appropriate authorities, Dae-hyun said diplomatically. Captain Morden's voice carried a note of barely controlled fear. Captain, may I ask, what other technologies has humanity developed that we might not be aware of? The pause that followed this question seemed to last forever. When Dae-hyun finally answered, his words sent a chill through every alien on the communication channel. That would depend on what you consider important to know. In the distance, the last of the Devourer ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, fleeing a system where they had learned that the galaxy contained predators far more dangerous than themselves. The Alliance fleet remained where they were, their crews trying to process the fact that everything they thought they knew about human technology had been wrong. 2 hours after the battle ended, representatives from every ship in the Alliance fleet had requested permission to come aboard the Silent Thunder. Captain Dae-hyun had politely declined most of these requests, but he did agree to host a small meeting with the senior commanders. The conference room aboard the human ship was nothing like the impressive chambers the aliens were used to. The walls were metal, painted a simple gray color. The table was made of actual wood, something most aliens had never seen before. The chairs were basic designs that looked like they had been built by hand rather than grown in fabrication tanks. Admiral Keth Vara sat across from Captain Dae-hyun, her metallic skin reflecting the plain lighting fixtures mounted on the ceiling. She had been studying the human captain for the past hour, trying to understand how someone who looked so ordinary could command such devastating power. "Captain," she said finally, "I need to understand something. Your ship, your technology, your entire approach to warfare, it is completely different from anything we know. How did humanity develop along such a different path?" Dae-hyun leaned back in his simple chair, considering his answer. "Admiral, may I ask you a question first? When your people developed energy weapons, what problem were you trying to solve?" "Efficiency," Kethvara replied immediately. "Energy weapons are clean, precise, and can be powered directly from a ship's reactor. They seemed like the obvious advancement beyond projectile weapons." "And when you developed your stealth systems?" Commander Zilthara answered this time. "We wanted to bend light and sensor beams around our ships, to become invisible by manipulating the fundamental forces of space-time." Captain Morden nodded with his four heads. "Our shield systems work by creating energy fields that deflect or absorb incoming attacks. The more energy we can generate, the stronger our defenses become." Dae-hyun smiled, though there was no humor in the expression. "You all solved the problems. You could see. Humans have always been better at solving the problems that others miss." "What do you mean?" Admiral Kethvara asked. "Your energy weapons are indeed efficient and clean," Dae-hyun explained, "but they require enormous amounts of power to be effective, and they can be absorbed or deflected by sufficiently advanced defenses. A kinetic projectile, however, carries its energy with it. It does not matter how advanced your shields are. If a piece of metal hits you at 15% of light speed..." Commander Zilthara leaned forward, her blue skin shifting to a deeper shade as she concentrated. "But the power requirements to accelerate matter to such velocities are enormous." "Yes," Dae-hyun agreed, "which is why we developed better power sources. While you were perfecting fusion reactors, we were learning to safely contain antimatter reactions." "Safely contain antimatter?" Captain Morden's voice carried disbelief. "The magnetic field requirements alone would require technology we do not possess." Bonsu, who had been quietly listening from his position near the door, spoke up. "Captain, may I explain our containment systems?" Dae-hyun nodded, and his engineer moved to the front of the room. Despite being in the presence of some of the most advanced beings in the galaxy, Bonsu looked completely comfortable. "The key is not to fight the antimatter," he said simply. "Instead, we learn to work with it. Our containment fields use the antimatter's own properties to help contain it. The system is actually quite stable once you understand the principles." "Quite stable?" Admiral Kethvara's voice rose. "You are discussing the controlled annihilation of matter and antimatter aboard a ship with a human crew." "Yes," Bonsu said, with a slight smile. "My daughter's bedroom is 3 decks above the antimatter containment chamber. She sleeps there every night when we are docked at our home station." The silence that followed this statement was profound. The idea that humans would live in close proximity to such dangerous technology was beyond anything the aliens could comprehend. See, Daehyun continued, while you developed technology to make warfare more civilized, we developed technology to end wars quickly. Your energy weapons can disable a ship without killing everyone aboard. Our kinetic weapons destroy threats so completely that other threats surrender rather than face the same fate. Is that what happened today? Commander Zilthera asked quietly. The remaining Devourer ships fled because they realized they could not win? Correct. Sometimes the most humane way to end a conflict is to demonstrate overwhelming force early, before casualties mount on both sides. Admiral Kethavara was beginning to understand the human approach to warfare. You do not seek to outfight your enemies. You seek to convince them not to fight at all. Exactly, Daehyun confirmed. A reputation for overwhelming capability prevents more conflicts than it causes. Captain Mordun had been quietly analyzing everything he had learned about human technology. Captain, your stealth systems, your weapons, your power sources, they are all based on fundamental physics rather than exotic manipulation of space-time. Why did you choose this approach? Because fundamental physics never change, Daehyun replied. Gravity, kinetic energy, electromagnetic radiation, these forces work the same way everywhere in the universe. Exotic technologies can be countered by other exotic technologies, but it is very difficult to defend against a chunk of metal moving at relativistic speeds. The alien commanders sat in contemplative silence, absorbing the implications of what they had learned. Everything about human technology suddenly made sense from this perspective. The crude appearance, the simple systems, the reliance on basic physics. It was all part of a deliberate strategy. Captain, Admiral Kethavara said formally, I believe I speak for all of us when I say that the galactic community has seriously underestimated humanity. We would like to propose a formal alliance between our species. I will convey your proposal to my government, Daehyun replied diplomatically. Commander Zilthara leaned forward eagerly. Captain, would humanity be willing to share any of your technological advances? Your kinetic weapons could revolutionize galactic defense. Daehyun's expression became carefully neutral. Commander, our technology requires not just different machines but different ways of thinking. It took humanity centuries to develop the manufacturing techniques needed to build our current ships. The learning curve for other species might be significant. But surely some cooperation would be possible, Captain Mordun pressed. Joint research projects, perhaps? Perhaps, Daehyun agreed. Though you should understand that what you saw today represents only a small fraction of human military capability. The aliens exchanged worried glances. Admiral Kethavara found her voice first. Captain, exactly how many ships like the Silent Thunder does humanity operate? Daehyun stood up from his chair, signaling that the meeting was coming to an end. Admiral, let me put it this way. The Silent Thunder is classified in our fleet as a patrol vessel. It is not considered a primary warship. The implications of this statement hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. If a ship capable of destroying entire fleets was considered a minor patrol vessel, what did human primary warships look like? Captain, Commander Zilthera said weakly, what would you classify as a primary warship? Daehyun smiled, and this time there was a hint of warmth in the expression. Commander, I hope you never have to find out. As the alien representatives prepared to return to their own ships, Admiral Kethavara paused at the conference room door. Captain Daehyun, one final question. Today you saved millions of lives and eliminated a threat to the entire galaxy. Why did you help us after the way we treated you? Dae-hyun considered the question for a moment before answering. Admiral, humans have a saying, actions speak louder than words. You judged us by our words and appearance. We prefer to be judged by our actions. As the alien shuttles departed the silent thunder, the commanders looked back at the human ship with new understanding. It still looked like a collection of scrap metal held together with hope and determination, but now they knew that appearances could be very deceiving indeed. Behind them, scattered across thousands of cubic kilometers of space, the debris field from the Devourer fleet continued to expand. It would serve as a reminder to anyone who passed. Through this system that sometimes the most dangerous predators were the ones that looked the most harmless. In the distance, more ships were arriving. They appeared on sensors as simple cargo vessels and civilian transports. But the alien commanders were no longer making assumptions about human technology based on appearances alone. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today. Never underestimate the species that throws rocks, especially when those rocks are traveling at 15% of the speed of light.